Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the Middle East Forum's webinar and podcast series, Israel Insider with Nave Dromi today. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion. We're pleased to have Nave Dromi, Director of MEF Israel, join us to update us on the events going on in Israel. Nave will be giving us a briefing on current Israeli affairs for 15 minutes, then open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And now, with no further ado, I'll turn the discussion over to Nave Dromi.
Thank you, Stacey. Hello, everyone. It was a very busy and dramatic week in Israel when it comes to political changes in Israel. As most of you know, in the beginning of this week, a new government was established in Israel. This is the first time in Israel that a party of only 6 seats, the head of this party is the Prime Minister of Israel, one of the most difficult countries in the world to handle. It caused a lot of drama and a great argument and discussion in Israel, which is still existing, and I don't see any end to this discussion. Basically what happened, just to give you a general background, after 4 elections, Naftali Bennett, which was identified with the right-wing camp, which has only 6 seats. He won 7 seats, but one of the Knesset members of his party voted against this government, so it's considered to be only 6 seats. He left the right-wing camp in order to establish a government with the left-wing camp in Israel. So after 12 years, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud are in the opposition. This is the first time in Israel also that the biggest party in Israel and the leader of the biggest party in Israel is in the opposition. I think the major event here, even though many people want to talk about the politics, I think the major event is how this politics affect the public. In many eyes of the right-wing camp, this step of Naftali Bennett took the right-wing camp to May 1977, a day before 16th of May 1977, a day before Menachem Begin became the prime minister after 30 years of Mapai, which was identified with the left. The reason the public takes it so hard is that the left-wing camp couldn't establish a government if Naftali Bennett wouldn't help them. And for many people in Israel, this is considered to be a political betray, one of the biggest one, and also an anti-democratic step, because due to all polls in Israel, if Naftali Bennett would say before what he's going to do, he wouldn't pass the threshold of the seats he needs to be in order to even be in the Israeli parliament. The situation right now that since he has no political force, for example, Avigdor Lieberman, which sits with him in the same government, has more seats as Naftali Bennett, the prime minister. Shas, which is another party of 9 mandates, and they are in the opposition, they have more political force than Naftali Bennett. So the political situation is very, very delicate. And the accusation against them that since they established a left-wing government, they won't have any option but to promote left-wing steps because this government won't survive. Just to try and explain to you how delicate is the situation, is that 60 votes were pro the government and 59 against the government. And there are 2 Knesset members, Eli Avidar from Israel Beitenu, which declare himself as independent Knesset member, which is not which doesn't see himself as part of Israel Benu. And there is another Knesset member, Al-Harumi, an Arab Knesset member from Ra'am, the Islamist party, which is the first time there is an Islamist party in the Israeli government, which also declared that he is not that he doesn't see himself as obligated to the coalition agreements. So this government is very delicate. We don't know what will happen. Many people from the government, their hope was that Benjamin Netanyahu, once he lost, will live the political life and go to give lectures in the world. But what happened is that Benjamin Netanyahu chose not to live the political life and to stay in the government as the head of the opposition. And he is supposed to be, according to all evaluations, a very powerful head of the opposition. And just to give you an example from an event that took place in Israel yesterday and got to the headlines here, there was an event to memorize the journey of the Ethiopian Jews from Ethiopia to Israel, which is a very heroic journey. And the head of the coalition, Miki Levy, was giving a lecture, was giving a speech to the crowd. And during his speech, Netanyahu entered the room. And everyone in the room just stood up and applauded to Netanyahu. It's just to give you an example about how the situation here is so, I will call it special, delicate, interesting, all the compliments that you would like to give. I think they would somehow fit themselves to the situation in certain way. I believe Naftali Bennett will have very difficult times, not only from the opposition, but also from the other parties that sits in the government with him. You need to remember that in 2 years, he needs to give his seat to Yair Lapid from Yesh Atid. And according to all evaluations, Yair Lapid wouldn't want Naftali Bennett to be a good prime minister because they are fighting for the same votes right now. Naftali Bennett, since he has nothing to look for in the right, he will try to approach to the center left-wing crowd, which is the same crowd of Yair Lapid, of Benny Gantz. So Yair Lapid doesn't have the political interest that Naftali Bennett will be a good prime minister. Also Lieberman also is looking forward maybe to one day be the prime minister. And if Naftali Bennett has 6 seats and he is the prime minister, why can't Avigdor Lieberman with more seats can be the prime minister? So as I see it, he will have a lot of problems. And I still didn't get to the points where he will have dilemmas according to ideological arguments that they will have. I don't think that the ideological arguments will be with Yamina, the prime minister party, Naftali Bennett party, because as it seems right now, and in my view, they are fully with the left, according to what you see in the interviews. I think he will have more problems, ideological problems, from Avigdor Lieberman, which will make his life harder, and maybe from some of the people in Gidon Sa'ar party. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, so I will end my my speech, I will call it, and I will leave more time for questions. I hope it was interesting and that I managed to somehow reflect to you the situation in Israel. It's very hard, to be honest, especially in English, because the situation is very complicated also in Hebrew. So in English, it might be even more.
All right, thank you so much. So the first question we have in from Liebscher, he prefaced it saying, this is a more personal question of your opinion. If you're not comfortable answering, that's fine. But his question is, yes, Naftali Bennett is very intelligent, but do you think he makes good, wise, mature judgments?
Ask me again. You're saying that he's very intelligent, but
Does he make good judgments?
look, I don't have a problem, to be very honest. I voted for Naftali Bennett before in the past. I thought that he and the Ayelet Shaked would be good politicians. I regret it. I think I made a mistake. I think Naftali Bennett, I wrote about it before. I think Naftali Bennett admire Netanyahu. He even once said it. And my belief is that he think that he will be good as Netanyahu and even better. And he believes that he will be so good that the public will forgive him about what he did. You have to understand that most of the public in Israel is leaning to the right. And the fact that the left wing got to the head, got to the government after all these years with the help of a right-wing party, it's not something that the Israeli public will forgive. I will say something which is not very, I will call it formal. I wouldn't say that Naftali Bennett, I will rephrase myself. I don't know. I think that he's starving to be the prime minister. I'm not sure if it's intelligence. It's just the aspiration to be prime minister, together with the belief that he will be one of the best prime ministers Israel had, which caused this fatal reality.
Understood. Thank you for that. From David Levine, you spoke about how the ideological differences probably won't be from within Bennett's own party, but do you think Bennett's remaining members will stick with him if he attempts to impose left-wing policies?
Absolutely.
Okay. And from Alvin.
I can answer it. I mean, they will stick to him no matter what.
Understood. Thank you. From Alvin Corres, who can we trust less? Bennett, who has reneged on his word of not sitting with a centrist, Lapid, who has no experience with foreign diplomacy as foreign minister, or Lieberman, who is notably corrupt.
Who can we trust less?
Who can we trust less?
But you gave me all the bad options. It's not fair.
Sorry.
Look, I to be honest, none of them. I mean, I thought Naftali Bennett will share my ideology, but obviously he doesn't. It won't be surprised that I'm a right-wing person. To be honest, I don't know. I once thought also that Lieberman is a right-wing person. I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
Understood, no problem. Is it possible that the left-wing majority in the new government will push Israel into making concessions to the Palestinians to satisfy the US State Department?
Of course.
Okay. And would you like to elaborate a little bit on that, or is it just...
I would try to explain to you. Think about yourself as Naftali Bennett. You are more than a decade in the Israeli politics. You've been the education minister, the security minister, the economic minister, and suddenly, out of nowhere, you are in the head of a party with 6 seats, and you have the option to be the prime minister of Israel, one of the countries that get most of the attention in the world, that many people look about what's going on here. Would you give up this option? I think that this is what caused Bennett go for this step. He could have also go with Netanyahu. Netanyahu offered him to be prime minister with him. But who would want to be prime minister after Netanyahu, which is so popular in Israel? It will make you look bad. So if you're smart political, you want to go with the politicians that will make you look bad because he is so popular. You will go with the politician which is in the middle, because then you won't look so bad next to him. So this is what Naftali Bennett did. So once he achieved this goal, why would he give up on this? I mean, why would he not start negotiation with the Palestinians if Biden wants it? He will say, okay, I will just speak with the Palestinians, nothing will happen, it's okay. But one of the biggest achievements of the last decade is that the negotiation with the Palestinians somehow got off the table. Once you get them back on the table, you will get other things back on the table. And I still didn't get to speak about Iran. Yair Lapid said 2 days ago that we have to get to realize that we have to go back to the agreement with Iran, which most of the Israeli public is against it. So if you're a new prime minister, you're Naftali Bennett, you have only seats and you have the option to be the prime minister of Israel, you would sell your principles, even when it comes to the Palestinians, just to remain the Israeli prime minister.
Well, thank you for that. Do you think Naftali Bennett's government will be tougher on Hamas now that the ceasefire was broken?
No.
Okay.
I think if it will be tougher on Hamas, it won't come from Naftali Bennett. It will come from Omer Bar-Lev from the Labour Party. This is my opinion. It might sound strange, but Omer Bar-Lev is part of the former Mapai party of Ben-Gurion, which they were their view about victory of the Palestinians, of the terror, it was very clear, very sharp. There was no games. You mess with us, then you're going to pay. And I believe Omer Bar-Lev comes with the same spirit. Naftali Bennett is not the same. Again, he wants to make sure that his government won't fall. So it's a very delicate dance. If you ask Naftali Bennett, he will try to avoid any operation. But if you ask Omer Bar-Lev, which is not a security minister, yes, it's just an example, it will be different. But Naftali Bennett, again, has no interest to go to operations that will get Hamas to a more terrible situation they have than today. And also you have to remember that Naftali Bennett here in Israel enjoys more support from the media because the elite in Israel, the media in Israel is more identified with the left. And Naftali Bennett finally established a left-wing government, then there is no reason that most of the media will not support his moves.
Thank you. From Len Getz, what do you think Netanyahu could have done differently to maintain a right-wing government and avoid a fifth election?
Just I reminded something again about the other question. Naftali Bennett, according to some of the reports, offered one of the most important jobs to Amos Yadlin. Amos Yadlin from the INSS is identified with the left-wing establishment of the security establishment in Israel. Security establishment that believe that there is nothing like victory. There is nothing like defeat. So when you see someone like this being appointed to such an important job, like Amos Yadlin, like Bennett is maybe going to take Yadlin, you can understand the perception about victory, about defeat, and you can see where Naftali Bennett is going. Can you ask me again the question that you...
Of course, from Len Getz, what do you think Netanyahu could have done differently to maintain a right-wing government and avoid a fifth election at the same time?
Well, it's very tough. It's a long answer to a short question. I will tell you this again, it's my personal perspective. As I see it, Menachem Begin in 1977 was elected and did what we call in Israel the revolution. In 1982, Israel had a war in Lebanon against the PLO. Israel suffered from many terror attacks, very violent attacks from Lebanon, and Israel went out for a war against the terrorists in Lebanon. It was the first war in Israel that wasn't run by a Mapai government. Every day, left-wing organizations sat outside Begin house and changed the numbers of soldiers that got killed in order to push him to resign from his job. In the end, they succeeded. Ariel Sharon, which was right-wing person and ideological and a person of principles, in 2005 did a disengagement, as I see it, as part of the pressure of the left-wing camp in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu has the same pressure, even bigger than on Sharon, because of the cases against him that say that he is corrupted. And if you follow these cases today in Israel, you see that those who filed these cases, they don't have material. They now ask the court to give them more time to review the material again. As I see it, this was a very intelligent movement, very smart, to make people believe that this government is corrupted, that Netanyahu has been too long prime minister, and this is what made him corrupted. And unfortunately, many people, not many, but some people also from the right, bought this argument. You would see these people that spoke against the corruption sitting today with people that has arguments about corruption. So as I see it, even though I have criticism about Netanyahu, that I would like him to go more to the right, I think that what's happening now is the opposite of what Israel needed, especially in this time. And I think what caused Netanyahu go to the opposition is, most of all, is on the shoulders of right-wing people who bought the left-wing terminology.
Thank you so much for that explanation. From Jeffrey Norwitz, where do Netanyahu and Bennett supporters agree?
I will tell you something. I don't know how many Bennett supporters were left. According to all polls, even though, I mean, there are only 3 mandates that support him. It's like 3 or 4 mandates. It's like 250,000 people. It's nothing. It's the size of a city like Petah Tikva. What I would say that both believe that they want the benefit of Israel, but I don't think there is any comparison between the supporters of Bennett to the supporters of Netanyahu. Also, when you're saying supporters of Netanyahu, you need to remember that inside there are voters to Shas, which is an ultra-Orthodox party, voters to Tzionut Datit, the religious Zionism, voters of Yehudut Torah. So it's not supporters only of the Likud and Netanyahu. Whoever voted to those parties I mentioned agreed to have Netanyahu as prime minister, which is almost 53 mandates. Naftali Bennett has, again, between 3 to 4 mandates. It's the size of Petah Tikva, so the comparison, I think, I don't know how even to do it.
Understood. Thank you. From Peter Chu, how dangerous is it, in your opinion, that there is now an Islamist party in the governing coalition in Israel for the first time? And what does Islamist mean in the case of Ram?
So I'll be honest. I mean, I think 2 months ago, or so, before the violence here in the streets of Israel, where Israeli Arabs acted in terrible violence toward Jews, I would say that Mansour Abbas, the head of Ra'am, is someone that we have to have in the Israeli government. And also during those violation events, he was one of the only Arab leaders that spoke against this violation. But saying that, when you view the text and the saying of Abbas and other people in his party about Israel, about Zionism, you realize that this is something that we can't look about it so easily. One of the things that Ra'am said when they entered the government that they will say they will do is that they will give up every subject which is related to national issues, that they only want to focus on the citizen issues, which is something that I think everyone in Israel can relate. Citizen issues, it means, I don't know, school, welfare, health, etc., etc. But in his speech in Arabic, after he entered the coalition, he said to his Arab speakers, voters, that what they're going to do in the Negev, for example, is something which serve the national goal of the Islamist party, which for me is something terrible. The Negev is one of the neglected areas in Israel, which Israel doesn't manage to handle. And now that this party got the key, got the budget to do there whatever it wants, and again, they can do it very easily because it's a very narrow government, and they can hold Naftali Bennett to do what they want just to keep the government. I think it's a very dangerous situation.
Thank you so much. From Stephen Orlow, and this will probably be our last question of the day. I'm so sorry. We have so many great ones that have come in. It is reported that Shas and Likud have submitted no confidence motions. How will a coalition with a one vote majority survive the possible barrage of a no confidence motion?
I'm not sure I understood the question.
Rephrasing. So it was reported that the Shas and Likud have submitted a no confidence motion against Bennett and the coalition. How will they survive with only one vote in the majority against this?
Okay, I think I know what he speaks about. Those submissions, we're going to see it a lot. And this is what I explained in the beginning, that they only have one vote that separates them. It's going to be very hard. The opposition with Netanyahu is going to be a very, very tough opposition. I mean, putting aside my personal views, as someone that likes politics, it's going to be very interesting to see all this. I mean, what Likud and Shas did is going to happen again and again and again until this government will fall. This is something that we will see, as I believe we're going to see it a lot. I will give you just an example for, I will give you an example for something that's happening right now. Yesterday, the head of the coalition, Idit Silman, from Naftali Bennett party, she decided that in the first month of this government, of this Knesset work, none of the Knesset members will be able to bring up law offers in order to make sure that the government is being stable. They don't want Knesset members to bring up law offers because they're afraid that there will be law offers that will cause arguments that will make this government fall. So she basically decided that no Knesset member can offer any law. And even Knesset members that are supported of this government because it's a left-wing government, like Ahmed Tibi. Ahmed Tibi is from the Arab party that didn't vote for this government. He said that what she did, Idit Silman, is anti-democrat. So you can see that they are trying to maintain this government. They're trying to hold it in every possible way because it's only one vote. And we're going to see these scenarios all time. I hope it will be interesting, but that Israel will go through it with less damage as possible.
That's what we all hope, I think. All right. Well, we've come to the close of our webinar and podcast. Nave, thank you again for taking time to update us.
With pleasure.
Of course. For all our viewers, thank you for joining us. And please join us Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern for another one of our webinars. Thank you all again, and I hope you have a great day.